Welcome in, Big Blue Nation, to another episode of the Cats Talk podcast. I'm your host, Cameron Johnston. He is your host, Jacob Boyers. And once again, no Tyler Britton. He's out grinding up, making some money from what I've been told. I don't know what he's doing to make that money, but hey, we're not going to ask too many questions here. The Cats get their fifth ranked win of the season, beat Texas A&M Aggies 81-69. Jackson Robinson taunts Buzz Williams in what is probably one of the best things I've seen so far this year. Came into the game loving Buzz Williams and love what he's done for that A&M squad throughout the seasons. And boy, was he soft in this game. I'm not sure what your takeaways were specifically on Buzz Williams. We'll kind of start there and then we'll get moving. What do you think about Buzz in this game?
I'm kind of with you. I really liked Buzz until last night. I mean, good Lord, the guy did not stop whining to the refs. I mean, A&M's bench was taunting all game, and Jackson Robinson turns around after he makes a three, and Buzz is acting like, he shot somebody, and then the timeout at the end of the game was probably the lamest move, and maybe even lamer, though, was Jimmy Dykes, defending it, just horrendous all around. But, yeah, Buzz is not one of my favorite coaches in the SEC right now.
I can't believe we failed to mention on the previous podcast, Jackson obviously played at Texas A&M with Buzz Williams. So obviously, there's a little contingency there. Obviously these two, no matter what Buzz said pregame, how they like each other and they text throughout the week. I mean, I don't know if you got the same feeling I do. I don't see a good relationship there in which they would text back and forth. Maybe Buzz texts them and there's no response back. Is what it seems like to me. But, man, it was good to see Jackson Robinson get hot for the second straight game. And, had to win this game in a different way than what we're used to. And I think that's what I was most impressed with. Because this is the first game, we haven't just outscored the other team. This time we actually were able to sit down, play defense. And, you and I were talking throughout the entire game. Even though we were losing by 5-6 throughout the entire first half, A&M was knocking down threes. They were shooting 50% from three at one point. We were shooting horrendously. And I was like, man, I feel really good about this game going into half. And then we take the lead going into halftime and really just kept that lead throughout the entire game.
Yeah, a team that averages under 8 threes a game for the whole season, makes 7 in the first half. And, Pope came out afterwards and said our game plan was to let a couple of their guys shoot threes. And, even though they were making them in the first half, it didn't really, changed. He wanted them to continue to shoot them because he knew that those percentages would even out, and they did, as they didn't make a single one there in the second half. Yeah, about Jackson Robinson, obviously kept great momentum rolling. I asked you on the last episode, do we think that was kind of the spark he's going to need for the rest of the year, and we can kind of expect it, and follows it back up with 22 strong points. He had mentioned beginning of the season, he didn't say who, but he said there's one game circled on the calendar for him. I don't know why. I kind of just assumed it was Arkansas, but come to think of it, obviously, Musselman's not there anymore. So I guess it wasn't that one, and I think we kind of saw last night that it was A&M. Yeah, I agree. Him and Buzz cannot have a good relationship. It was pretty clear throughout that entire game. And then just as in the game as a whole, I completely agree with you. As impressive of a game as I've seen from these guys. Obviously, another top 15 win, 5-0 against top 20 teams on the season. They were rolling. I told you, I said, if we get this kind of play from Amari Williams and Jackson Robinson for the rest of the year, this is a national championship contending team. The big thing I felt like we were missing was an inside presence, especially on the defensive side. And if Amari's going to give you that kind of rebounding that he's given you the last two games, and then Jackson's that kind of elite level scorer, then this team is going to go to a whole new level.
Completely agree with you. Let's go ahead and talk about Jackson, just the stat line real quick before we bounce over to Amari. Jackson had 22 points on 8 of 17 shooting, 5 of 13 from the 3-point line. I think he started off 0 for 3 from the 3-point line, so it was good to see, still wasn't hesitant, finished 5 of 10 on his last 10 3-point attempts. And one of the biggest things I thought that we got from Jackson Robinson, how about 8 rebounds from him?
Yeah.
Hasn't really dove into, that rebounding atmosphere, kind of we've seen Otega and Ansley do as of late. How good was it to see Jackson Robinson crashing the boards? Because as we're about to talk about, Amari's been huge on the glass as well.
Yeah, it was huge. We've kind of talked, and like, Pope mentioned it after the Mississippi State game and that breakout game. Like Jackson was kind of getting in his head too much, whether he was making or missing. And last night, to your point, starts out 0 for 3 from behind the arc, but doesn't really let it bother him. And then he had that one in the second half where he misses his three, runs, gets the long like tap rebound ahead to Ortega that ended up setting up. I think that was the Travis Berry three. Like just winning plays. Like the guy not only is scoring, he's making all the winning plays, and it's huge. It's awesome to see, and I'm excited now. Like we're starting to see the Jackson Robinson that early in the season we were really talking about, the guy that can work his way into getting drafted. I know he's not there yet, but like if he does this over the next 3 months, there'll be a team that'll take him.
Especially, just in general, if you lead a team into a deep tournament run and you are the marquee guy for that team, you're going to get drafted. Obviously, might not be the first round, but a second round pick, especially with what he's starting to flash as of late with that 3-point jump shot. And I mean, his defense has been really good as of late too, especially, with the height that he has. He's 6'5", 6'6". If he can start to be a steady rebounder for this team going forward, I think that'll really improve his draft stock as well. Speaking of, the glass, I mean, what about Amari Williams? You heard all week from every media outlet you could hear from how good Texas A&M was on the offensive glass. And man, we out-rebounded Texas A&M 40-30. It's our second straight game out-rebounding the opponent, which I think is one of the first times we've done it this season, especially since we started to get into our real games, non-Brown, Colgate type games. It's great to see it from Amari. I personally think he's had 3 great games back-to-back-to-back. I know the Georgia game, he got into foul trouble and was kind of limited in that game, but I do think in the minutes that he had in that game, he was very good. And in this game, only had 8 points, which obviously, he's not going to be our go-to offensive threat. But 4 assists, 12 rebounds, 3 on the offensive end, and a steal and a block to go along with that. And I don't know about you, it just seems like his motor, ever since, he had that pregame speech for Mississippi State, it just seems like he's taken it to a whole new level. He feels confident in himself, and it's really starting to show on the court. And like you said, we have performances like that from Jackson and Amari game in and game out. I don't know if I agree with national contender or, Final Four with just those two, but I do think it pushes this team a lot closer to that mark.
Yeah, let me be clear. I'm not obviously saying just those two, but I feel like we've gotten pretty consistent play from, we know what Lamont's going to give you, especially on the defensive side. We know what Ortega is kind of just steadily going to give you. And, Andrew Carr, we talk about Ortega having quiet points. Andrew Carr, I feel like, has been having a lot of quiet, 10 to 14 point games. But yeah, back to Amari. He played phenomenal last night. Probably the game I was the most impressed with him from this season. When I vent my frustrations about Amari, like everybody else talks about his turnovers, like those are obviously part of it. But the big thing for me was what you alluded to, the effort. I constantly said, like, he just seems like there's plays that he would take off. He hasn't done that, to your point, over the last 3 games. Like, his motor's running. If he's not in foul trouble, he's out there giving it his all. And I think the last 2 games especially, you've really seen, like, when this guy's just got his motor running and his hands up and he's going after the ball and, playing some defense, it just adds a spark to this team. And he's a guy that, when he makes a big play or gets a big offensive rebound or draws an offensive foul trying to go for the ball, you see it. He's getting everybody else fired up. And I think the rest of the guys obviously feed off that energy.
I mean, he's been continuously making big plays, especially over this last 2-game stretch. I'm excited to see, what he can continue to do, continue to grow as he feels more comfortable with his team and in this system. I'd like to talk about the lack of calls that he gets. I swear, man, he gets mugged down low, and then anytime he tries to assert some sort of physicality, it looks like he's the first one to get whistled. I don't know if that's just because
that one was horrible.
That's what I'm saying. I feel like it's happened, especially a lot in that Georgia game. Of course, we talked about how many fouls were called in that game, and obviously, that crew needs to go figure out what's going on with them. But I mean, it just feels like he's getting called for everything and not getting calls on the other end. Like there are certain plays where he's quote unquote getting blocked, but it's really just he's getting his elbow taken out from underneath of him. And people are getting mad at Amari for not finishing. The one I will agree on them with was that fast break where he decided to go for a layup instead of just hammering it home. I want to see Amari have Ortega's confidence because as we're going to talk about, Otega obviously had a great poster in this game. But let's not forget, Otega's been on the receiving end of those posters. I think each of the last 3 games where he's gotten denied at the rim.
Yeah.
I think Santo at Georgia got him twice just in that game himself. So I do want to see Amari go to the rim with that confidence, kind of like Otega has been.
Yeah, I think it was the Amari one where after he missed it, I texted you and I was like, have we ever had a player get a steal and run down and make the layup? I feel like we score a lot there, but it's because the trailer's just coming. I mean, what was it, Lamont that blew the layup in the first half and Amari was there just kind of clean it up?
Yep.
So, yeah. And then, can't just skate over that dunk by Otega. That's going to be up there as one of the best ones. I mean, I don't know if it was James Young, UConn, but I mean, that was a pretty damn good dunk. I said it wasn't, but I mean, that's one of the better dunks we've seen in Rupp Arena. I mean, that's up there with. I mean, Willie had a lot of his on the road, but I mean, that was one of the better dunks I've seen.
Especially against competition like this. Normally, those dunks you see, they're against Colgate, Brown, guys of that nature, guys who really don't belong on the same floor as you, athleticism-wise. So it's good to see Otega get one of those. Let's go ahead and talk about the game that Otega had. Really, it was a quiet game for most of the game. Finally got to his 10 points. Again, scored 10-plus in every single game this season. And, we keep talking about how consistent he's been throughout the entire year. But if I would have told you, 2-3 short months ago that Otega is pushing Malik Monk for the amount of consecutive 10 points per game streak, would you believe me?
No. I mean, I think before the season, I've said it many times, but I thought he would be coming off the bench. I thought he would be your 6th or 7th man, and Kobe Bray would be the starter. But Otega's been great. Missed his first 2 free throws, but then after that, he shot 7 of 8 the rest of the way. So, but yeah, the consistent just knowing he's going to go out there and give you 10 plus every night. And then again, like I said, with Andrew Carr, I think you're getting it as well. I mean, it's huge. Otega obviously started a little slow, but really all these guys outside of Jackson Robinson did. And then that's what, to the point earlier, makes me feel so good about this game. I mean, I feel like we played as bad of a first half as we could play. And then Amsley Amador hits a 3 in the first half and then gets fouled on a 3, makes all 3 free throws. He has 6 huge points when we couldn't get anything going. And then Jackson Robinson finishes the half, hot, and we're up 3 at halftime, and I text you, and I'm like, we played as bad of a first half as I feel like we played all year against a good team, and we're up 3. And that team had made as many threes in the first half as they average on a season. So, I mean, this was the game I felt like the most this team fought. And if you're getting that kind of fight from them, along with what they're capable offensively, I just really like this team.
And let's go ahead and talk about that Ansley 3 that he got fouled on, by the way. I didn't see any contact. I don't know about you.
They didn't let him land. Come on, they call that against us every game. They've called that. I mean, if you're going to call it against us, it'd be nice to get it for once, because I feel like Lamont's gotten called on that the last 7 games.
Yeah, I mean, I get what you're saying. I wouldn't have called it, but then again, there's 4 or 5 that have gone against us that I wouldn't have called either.
They've called it all year. If you're going to call it. I said the one episode, I think the most free play in basketball right now is just shoot a 3 and fall down. Somebody, they're calling it at least 85% of the time. So let's just keep doing it.
Honestly, that might be something, Pope's talking about gathering the analytics on the SEC refs and, the crews that are going around. Maybe that's something that they've noticed. And they've told the guys, if it is close, if it is, it's close and you don't have much room to land, go ahead and fall. I mean, it's been called against us. Obviously, we don't know if that's what he's doing. We're not behind those closed doors. But if it is, that would be genius. I do love Ansley with a little bit of the flop there and knocking down all 3 free throws there. And I'm telling you, man, since he changed the hairstyle, it's just been
he's been a dog. Yeah.
And then speaking on Otega Owe real quick before I forget, how about just the extra stats that he adds there for you? 4 assists in this game, 3 steals, and a block.
Yeah.
I mean, like we said, wasn't his greatest scoring showing so far this year. We've come to expect anywhere from 14 to 15 from him per game. Wasn't shooting the ball well from the field, but comes away with this game 4 assists, 3 steals, a block, and a poster. And this was what you could consider one of his not so great games.
Yeah, I agree. Real quick before we move on from his poster, was there a better reaction out there than Kerr Kriisa?
Kerr's always got the best reaction. I'll tell you what,
I mean, the whole bench was great, but Kerr, God, I love him. I'm ready to see him back on the floor just for entertainment value.
He's been, I'll tell you what, he still brings that electricity, no matter, even though he's not on the floor. But, I mean, let's go ahead and talk about the minutes that we're getting from Travis Perry with Kerr being injured. I mean, I don't know if you're seeing it like I am, but just over the past 2-3 games, it seems like he's getting a lot more comfortable. You're seeing that his jump shot in general, it looks like he has so much more confidence. They're starting to go down. And obviously, you know, the Kentucky fans are at Rupp. Man, if he lets it fly, you can hear the collective. And then as soon as they do, they're going crazy. So it's good to see him. You know, he knocks down 2 in this game, plays 10 minutes, you know, positive on the score chart here on the plus minus. Just good to see him getting going, especially, you know, because we still haven't really gotten an update or a timeline for when Kerr could possibly be back, if he is going to be at all.
Yeah, and with the way Travis Perry's playing, he's making that not as much of a priority. You know, I think early in the non-conference, after Kerr got hurt, we talked about, like, they can't take Lamont Butler off the floor. You know, that's not the case anymore. Perry is 100% more comfortable than he was a month and a half ago. He is knowing his role. He's playing within his role, too. He's not forcing any shots. He doesn't, every once in a while, he'll make a bad turnover, but for the most part, he's just running the offense, getting established. When his shot's open, he hits it. And then, you know, I talked about it. It was at Georgia where he went up, made the tough contested 2. Like, that's not something we'd really seen from him. We thought he would probably just be a shooter for most of this year. And then how about last night? He comes in, A&M goes right at him. What's Travis Perry do? He gets a steal. I'm not saying he's like the greatest defender in the world, obviously, but I mean, that's just the toughness that, you know, these guys played with last night, and it translated to the true freshman coming in and welcoming A&M to kind of come at him. And he gets a steal, hits 2 huge threes when we needed them. Those were huge baskets. We went from up 2, we were up 2, and then he made 2, and someone else made a bucket, and we're up 10. Like, at a huge time, Travis Perry just knowing his role and playing it perfect.
Couldn't agree with you more. I will say, though, you know, you talked about Jimmy Dykes a little bit earlier. The one thing I did agree with him on about midway through this game was, you know, it felt like we were up 15, 16 in this game, but you look at the scoreboard and it's 6 the entire time. I don't know why, but in the second half, like, you keep looking at the score and you're like, man, this is only a 2-possession game. But it really felt like we dominated the second half, even though I think we ended up being like +7 in the second half.
Well, and like that's what's going to happen in the SEC when you're playing good teams, right? Like it's going to be hard to pull away from these teams, especially a team like A&M that plays good defense, it's physical. Like they're going to find ways to keep themselves in the game. But I'm sure they said it at the end of the, you know, throughout the first half. I'm sure at the end of the first half they're like, how the hell are we losing this game? Or, you know, how did we not ever get this lead to 10 or 12 in the first half? So I just think that's going to be every game throughout the SEC, especially against, you know, good physical teams. It's going to be tough to pull away.
And, of course, we've got another one coming up on Saturday, so doesn't stop here. We got a lot more to go, man. I tell you what, this SEC, it's crazy. You know, a couple years ago, you could just be like, oh, you know, I don't really have to watch that game. You know, Cats should win that one and roll that one easily. And I tell you what, every game, like you even talk about like LSU obviously just beat Arkansas yesterday, and we thought LSU was one of the worst teams in the conference. I mean, and obviously, you know, Arkansas isn't playing well. Of course, we'll probably get to that at some point during the end of this podcast. How about Damian Collins getting a block on and tooth the arrow at the end of the game? What about that cat-on-cat crime to put Cal a little bit further down in his place?
Damian, I mean, he's a guy I always I don't forget he plays here, but then I see him at LSU and I'm like, oh yeah, he was a cat for a year or two. But no, and I'll take plenty of shots at Arkansas later, but this isn't necessarily a full-on shot of them. Like, that's the worst team in the SEC right now. It's a team with a ton of talent, you know, a first-round pick in Adute the Arrow, all kinds of 5 stars that came in, Big Z, like, and they're objectively the worst team in the SEC right now. So to your point, like there's no nights off. Arkansas can go in and beat anybody. As much as I don't think they will this year, like they can. They got the talent to, and that's the 14th best team in the SEC, or 16th, I guess now with the new teams.
And just continuing on that, I mean, Missouri just beat Florida, and we thought Missouri was going to be like towards the bottom of the conference. So
they got wins over Florida and Kansas.
Exactly. There's no nights off in the SEC. Obviously, we know that as this will technically be our 4th ranked matchup in a row now that Georgia's ranked. Yeah. I mean, it's nuts. But let's go ahead and let's get back to this game. Obviously, Cats get their 5th ranked win. I was texting you about it during the game. I've been really disappointed with Lamont Butler's performances since the Louisville game. In this game, he had 6 points, 7 assists, 6 turnovers, 0 for 3 from the field. And I tell you what, if I could bet like everything I had in the bank on him missing a wide open 3 or getting blocked to the rim 2 to 3 times a game, I'd put it on the house. But I'm not liking what I'm seeing from Lamont. Obviously, the minutes shouldn't go anywhere. Lamont should still be getting those minutes. He's the guy who kind of drives this offense. But, man, we're going to have to start seeing some more out of him because I don't know if we can expect nights like this out of Jackson every single night.
Yeah, I mean, I disagree in general of, like, since the Louisville game. I thought he's been really, really good. And, I mean, even with outside of, scoring, it's not like we brought him here to be our team leading scorer like he was in the Louisville game. Last night, I would say he probably played objectively bad. I mean, he did have some huge steals at times when we needed them. He had some really good on-ball defense. That play where he, kind of re-injured his shoulder after falling down, that was just straight up man-to-man, not letting his man by him, and then stuffs the guy on a jump shot for a jump ball. So, like, you're still getting the defense from Lamont. Jimmy Dykes, as much as he drove me crazy last night and some of the other games we've had him for this year, he did say he's the best on-ball defender in the SEC, and I think it's hard to find someone to argue with to that point. So I still think Lamont's really good. Again, we didn't bring him here to be the key offensive player. The 6 turnovers are obviously concerning. That's not what we need out of him. But in whole, I think it just shows what this team's capable of. There's so many guys, to your point. Maybe it's not Jackson next game, and then maybe Lamont struggles again or plays well, but then that could be a game where Owe goes for 25 or Brea comes in and hits 4 or 5 threes and, has 15 to 20. Like, there's so many guys on this team that can do it, and, it's not just a one person show.
I agree with that. I think that's why this team has been so successful to this point, because when there are guys who have off nights like Kobe Brea has the past 2, Jackson has stepped up in those places. My thing with Lamont, and I wish we could get like stats on this, is he had 3 steals in this game. I would love to see if we ever score off of a Lamont Butler steal created, because he's not finishing at the rim. And usually hopefully it's like an Amari putback dunk or BG follows him up, because right now Lamont's sure not finishing at the rim. Obviously, I don't want this to be a bag on Lamont. Obviously, it was just one bad game. But I'm telling you, I do think the defense is starting to get a little overhyped. I do think he is a very good on-ball defender. I wouldn't agree with the best in the nation. I do like Lamont and what he brings this team, because we obviously have really no other on-ball defenders like him. But I think we got to stop with the Lamont is the best defender in the country. I don't think he is to that level, especially considering, what good is getting a steal if you're throwing it back away and or missing a bunny at the other end?
Yeah, but those are 2 completely different arguments. If there's the best guard in the world that's similar size to him trying to go one-on-one in the nation, I wouldn't pick anybody else other than Lamont to play one-on-one straight up defense. Now, maybe ball screens he can struggle here or there, but just man up, straight up D, I think he's as good as anybody in the country.
I think he's up there. I just, I don't like the definitive statements on he is the best in the country, especially when there are 170 college basketball teams in the country, and we obviously don't watch every single 1 and 2 guard play throughout college basketball.
Jimmy Dykes said league, so SEC, so I'll agree with that one.
I will second on that one. But when we get talking about the nation, that's where I start to hit the brakes a little bit.
Yeah.
But let's go ahead and talk about, obviously you don't want to keep harping on, the disappointments in this game. But Kobe Bryant's second disappointing game in a row. Only played 18 minutes, 1 of 5 from the floor, and 1 of 5 from 3 as well. 5 points in this game. And man, I tell you what, when you talk about, we've gotten on Amari for the lack of effort in games. I think this has got to be the one where Kobe's getting ripped into. And I think you kind of saw it on the sideline after, I don't know how long that ball was on the floor. It felt like 5 seconds, and he was just like sitting there diving like he was doing like a full Pilates pose instead of just getting on the ground and getting a jump ball. And if you're not going to help, at that point, I think he was like 1 for 3 from the field. If you're not going to be in there to score like you are, and you're not going to give effort, Ansley's doing the effort right now at this point. Obviously, Kobe's going to start shooting better, but we got to get more effort from Kobe Bryant. I thought this was a very, very, very disappointing game from him.
Yeah, I agree. Guys are going to make and miss shots, right? Like, if Brea goes out there and he has nights where he's 1 for 7, but, to your point, he's kind of giving you his all, I'm not going to really say a bad word about him. Even he had a couple threes here where it was kind of forced again at the end of the shot clock, and, he had to put one up. Otherwise, you might be saying he was 1 for 3 and 33%. But yeah, that ball on the floor, I was screaming, like, just get on the floor. And to your point, it was so long that I had time to utter a full sentence yelling about it, and he just wouldn't. So, yeah, that wasn't great. I didn't pay attention enough the rest of the way to see what his effort was, throughout the entire game. But, like, that was obviously a big play with the camera on him at a big moment. So, got to be better in that situation. And he has all year, so I don't feel like it'll be an issue going forward, but that was obviously very bad.
To your point, guys are going to miss and make shots. Obviously, Kobe in the Florida game was terrific. Last 2 games, not as so. But you do need consistent effort from the guys. I think that's more of the sticking point. I think that's why you saw the effort just from the entire team kind of change after that play, because we got the timeout right after that. Obviously, A&M scored directly on that play. But I think you saw Pope actually a little bit of fire from Mark Pope, which you don't see a lot because he tries to coach in a different way that's not berating and or yelling at anybody. So it was good to see that he does have that piece in him, because I know people are talking about, will he ever get a technical foul? I'm still not sure he will. Obviously he has some in the past. I'm not sure if he will going forward. But, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, even yelling at the ref last night, the viral moment was just him yelling, "Oh my gosh." But, his jaw was on the floor. But yeah, still no cuss words and, not using the Lord's name in vain. He was right there for it.
And then 2 guys we got to talk about before we start talking about this Alabama game. Well, first off, let's go ahead and talk about Andrew Carr. We've mentioned him in passing. Yep. Obviously, he's still dealing with his back injury. Limited minutes in this game, played 25 minutes. A very easy and, nothing really to write home about. Almost felt like he really didn't play in this game, honestly. He didn't. But, had 13 points, 4 rebounds on 6 of 9 shooting. And like you mentioned, he's almost as consistent as Otega is at this moment, just getting 10-plus points. Granted, I'd love for those rebounds to be a little bit higher. I do think somebody's going to need to help Amari here soon. But in this game, it was Jackson Robinson, not necessarily BG and or Andrew Carr.
And Carr, I said, he had 13 quiet points. I remember 3 of them that weren't quiet, and he had that huge and 1 down the stretch. I think we were only up, 6 at the time. A&M was battling to get back in it. He gets the ball in the post and 1. Ball felt like it hung on the rim forever, but like, he is a guy. He's just another guy, man, that just finds a way to make a winning play, whether it's a and 1 or getting open for a 3. Like, he's just a guy when the other team's starting to make a push, he'll find a way to get some sort of bucket. And then, to the point, like, just consistency. He's been so consistent offensively as of late. Every game, it feels like you just blink. He's got 10 to 15. You don't even really remember how he scores them, but he makes some big winning plays and will score enough to really help catapult this team.
Yeah, and something I want to talk about, last guy we haven't talked about so far, BG. in my opinion, another underwhelming game from him. I can't have a 6'10" guy who's our most athletic guy on the team play 17 minutes and get 1 rebound. It can't happen. I get on Andrew Carr's case for playing 25 to 28 minutes a game and only grabbing 4. There is no world in which Brandon Garrison should be playing 17 minutes and have 1 rebound.
Yeah. BG he's been pretty frustrating as of late, and like we talk about, he's been a little better shooter. It's almost like in his world he's just trying to be a 6'10" guard anymore. Like he's wanting to hang out on the perimeter and either make plays or take a 3, and he's not wanting to do that kind of energy and physicality that we really hoped he would be subbing in for Amari. I mean, we didn't talk about it, but there were multiple times in that Georgia game where he's like waving off Lamont Butler so he could bring the ball down the floor. I think both times he turned it over. So like he's got to get back to just knowing his role as like an energy guy, and to your point, be a big man, go out there and rebound. You know, you're not out there to be a playmaking guard and make threes. If you're open for one, take it, great. But if not, you got to know your role.
And just in this game, I know he gave up 4 points off of free throw rebounds. I mean, and you notice it as soon as Amari goes off the floor. I mean, Amari literally had just gotten subbed out. BG is his second on the court, giving up an offensive rebound putback. And he is, I don't want to say he's an X factor for this team going forward, but could you imagine a world where Brandon Garrison starts to develop? Because we've been able to see, you know, he does have a jump shot. He's an athlete. He can get up and down the court. There's a ton of potential to tap into there. It just seems like right now we're getting the worst of both ends. He's a bad point guard, and then he's a bad center, not getting any rebounds at the moment. Hopefully, you know, this game against Alabama, where we're going to be getting up and down, I'm sure there's going to be lots of substitutions with Amari and Andrew, especially if Andrew's not 100%. We need BG to start showing up a little bit more.
Absolutely. And I mean, to the point, it was early in the season and preseason, BG was like the 41st projected player in the draft in some mock drafts. Like, he was a guy, you know, to your point, all the potential. So we just got to see it. And then free throw rebounding, dude. Like, there's not a thing that drives me more crazy. Like, you have 3 guys, they have 2. Figure it out. Just box out. Like, offensive rebounding can be miscued at times. Like, you know, obviously, if a team shoots a lot of threes, there's a lot of long rebounds. Like, I felt like that was more so the case with Florida. Like, those 50-50 balls can go either way. There's no excuse to not box out on free throws, and we give up 3 to feels like a million every game. Like, every game we're giving up offensive rebounds on free throws, and it kills me every time.
It's very frustrating, especially because it usually seems like that's when our big guys do get in foul trouble, because they're going to get a cheap foul off of that just because they know they already made a mistake, and then they'll end up compounding on that mistake.
Yeah.
But just in general, you know, obviously we don't want to end on this negative note, because 5th ranked win of the season.
Great win.
Cats win by 12. And like we've been mentioning the whole show here, got another team on Saturday at noon.
Bring it.
4th ranked Alabama. They'll probably drop in this rankings after just losing to Ole Miss. 14-3 Alabama, even after the Ole Miss loss. What do you think about them?
I mean, they're good, man. This is a team that went to the Final Four last year. I know, obviously, not everybody's back, but they got Sears and Grant Nelson back from that team, and they're obviously a really good team. Sears went off for 20 against the Cats last time out last year. Obviously, we kind of ran him out of the floor, and then, you know, neither here nor there, but Cal decided he never wanted to play the lineup that scored 117 points again. You know, to your me and you were talking before we kind of started recording. You know, Nate Oates is a really good coach, and he is somebody that I think we both at the time were hoping would end up here one day. And, you know, obviously it's worked out with Pope, and I wouldn't trade that for the world, but Nate Oates is a damn good coach. And his press conference last night, I saw a little bit of it on Twitter this morning. He was not happy with the effort against Ole Miss, and, you know, he called him out and said, we got way too much veteran leadership on this team to go out and not have effort on a Tuesday night. So I think he's going to have them ready to play, and I think Saturday's going to be a lot of fun, but it's going to be a very stressful game. And, I mean, this is obviously a Bama team that can walk into Rupp and get a dub.
I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, honestly, I think we might just have the 6'10" version of Nate Oates. So, I mean, their systems are obviously very similar. This is going to be the number 1 scoring team in the nation versus the number 3 team scoring in the nation. Alabama currently leading the nation with 89.5 points per game. And, it's kind of surprising because they're really not shooting that well from 3, shooting 32% from 3 as a team. They're missing Latrell Wrightsell. He got injured. He's out for the season earlier this year. He was probably their best 3-point shooter, shooting around 43%. I like the Cats' chances in this game. It's obviously going to be tough. We both play the same brand of basketball. I mean, there's a good chance this is just like that Florida game, if not maybe even a little higher scoring. And I know it's crazy to say because of how, we looked at all those advanced analytics for the Kentucky and Florida game, how many points we were scoring per possession. I tell you what, I wouldn't be surprised if this one goes above the 206 points scored in that game.
Yeah, I'll be interested to see where Vegas puts this over under. I don't know how you handicap this one. It's going to be a lot of points. To your point though, obviously Bama plays a similar style to us. That obviously this will be kind of another test, right? Like we played the rock fight against A&M. We weren't sure if they could win that. They did. We sped Mississippi State up. That was, kind of a good test. Florida is, I think, a little worse version of Bama. And so, like, if we can go out and against one of the other really good teams and continue to run up and down the floor, then I don't know if there will be a team in the country that can, play with us going at that pace.
We're going to get into our predictions here in a second. Obviously, MVP picks. I'm going to throw the ball to you first because you've been kind of stealing my thunder as of late on these score predictions. But I think we might have a differing opinion as opposed to the last two where we've been very close in our score predictions.
All right. I'll say because we're at home, Cats win. I'll go 101-96.
Who's the MVP for this game for you then?
Good question. I'll go back. I'll go Kobe Bryant. This will be like the Florida game where we'll be getting in and out of transition, and like that's where he really thrives. Like when we're up and running, and he can get out and find a hole, in a fast break, he's gonna find a spot and knock it down. So I don't know if he'll hit 7 like he did against Florida, but I'll say Kobe makes 5+ threes this game.
All right, so here going here forward, I am no longer giving you the floor first. I'm no longer being a gracious host because in this one you took my MVP pick for this game, so I'm going to have to come up with somebody else.
Mine's just off the cuff. I'm not thinking about it prior. I don't even think about it until you ask the question. I know it's coming, but like you hear me trying to get the wheels spinning up here and figure it out.
I'm going to say Kentucky does win this game as well, even though I do think Alabama is going to be highly motivated to get this win. Especially after, the tail kicking they took last year to what ended up being a team who didn't win an NCAA tournament game. I do see the Cats winning this one, though, 108-101. I'm going to have to try and come up with this MVP on the fly. But what do you think about 209 points being scored in this game?
I mean, I don't think Vegas will set it that high, so I think you could log on to FanDuel or DraftKings Saturday morning and get a little juice there.
Then I'm going to go ahead and take the chalk pick because, like you said, in the up and down game like this is going to be, really outside of Kobe Bryant, the other guy you got to take in a game like that is going to be Jackson Robinson, especially how he's been playing as of late. So go ahead and give me Jackson Robinson for the MVP of this game. Both have the Cats winning in this game. Tyler, he called me pre-pod. He's got Alabama in a lower scoring game. He's got Bama winning this game 88-82. I mean, we don't really care what Tyler has to think.
Yeah, I mean, he picked Florida.
Podcast.
He picked Florida. What does that guy know?
Couldn't agree with you more. Do you want to go ahead and get into the Cal stuff real quick before we log out of here?
I mean, what's there to talk about? I mean, I said it. Worst team in the SEC so far. The other crazy part of this is they're not even playing the tough teams yet. Like they go to Missouri Saturday. You expect them to win?
I don't expect them to win.
Exactly. And this is it's not a team that's going to make the tournament. people acted like he was going down there with this loaded roster. I mean, this roster really isn't that great. I mean, it's talented, and to the point, yes, they're the worst team in the SEC, and they're still really talented. But like, this isn't like he was taking 2015 down there, and he just doesn't know how to coach. It's not a great roster, and you have a horrible coaching staff, and you have a not very good head coach or a head coach that really cares anymore. So, I mean, it's bad. I kind of feel bad. I almost feel bad for Arkansas fans. They got scammed. They bought into the used car salesman pitch, and they're finding out that thing needs a new motor and transmission and everything. So they're in trouble.
I don't feel bad for Arkansas fans.
All right, you're right.
The amount of garbage they talked from March until September before the season started. I mean, they were just trying to let us have it nonstop. Oh, you guys ran Cal off. You ran Cal off. How does it feel? How do you feel? You're 11-6. 0-4 in the conference. Now, granted, now that I say this, watch them go on some stupid magical run.
It's not happening. Like,
I know it's not.
You don't have to put that disclaimer out there. Like, it's not. I mean,
especially imagine this team without Boogie Flandin and Duke Diero. I mean, this team would be horrendous. You got 2 probably first-round picks with those 2. And before I leave, I just want to talk about somebody I absolutely despise. Absolutely despise.
Oh, yeah. We got to get into this.
Seth Greenberg. I mean, could this guy be any more of a clown? I used to have, a little bit of respect for him. He'd bring out some good context. But, man, if I had to fund it, I'd probably pay ESPN a little bit of money just to get him out of here so I don't have to see him. At least don't let him work half times at Kentucky games because you know what he's going to say. He's going to try and find a way to, like, get fans not excited about the team. He'll say, oh, well, they're not ready for this rock fight. We were winning at halftime.
Yeah.
But we weren't ready for this. The PR firm of Greenberg for the Calipari camp, it needs to be taken off the air.
Yeah, I agree. I never thought I would like Jeff Goodman, but starting to really like him, and hate Greenberg. So agree with you everything there. I'll talk about the other guy that annoyed me, and we mentioned him briefly. Jimmy Dykes, man. I used to really like him. I thought he was as knowledgeable as anybody that calls a game, and like, this year, he's just turned into a little baby. Like, defending the Buzz Williams timeout, like, that was lame. It was lame of Buzz to call it. The game was over. Get out of there. And then, like, I don't know if you remember the Gonzaga game when BG had the and one, and he turns and yells and one, and they tee him up, and, Jimmy's up there, and he's, talking about how the refs are trying to get that nonsense out of the game. Like, just, it's so lame for a guy that used to be really good. And then we can't let him off the hook for talking about Kirk Kriisa, and he's like, Kirk's fired up in whatever language he speaks. Like, I mean, the guy speaks very fluent English. So
I actually like Jimmy Dykes. I'm not sure what he was doing.
Did too. I don't. But
even
this year he's felt brutal.
Yeah, even throughout the season, I've liked him. I didn't really have a problem with the Gonzaga game. This game, I thought he was very bad.
That one comment on the technical was just old man yelling at the sky. I mean, so.
All right, guys. Well, 2 of us have got wins for the Cats. Tip off Saturday, noon. Not sure if I like the noon game, but I do have a wine dinner that I have to attend at 6, so it is good to have it early. That way I can watch it.
Worth noting, probably our best offensive game was at 11 a.m. So like, maybe we just need to play nice and early, and these guys come out firing.
Maybe this is the perfect time. Maybe we get shoot-arounds in before the game. Maybe that's something that we'll get into as well. All right, guys, that is all for us here today. Cats take on the Crimson Tide at Rupp Arena, 12 p.m. Warriors and I got us picked wins. Tyler, on the other hand, going with a loss for the Cats.
That guy stinks.
Follow us everywhere you get your podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, Amazon Music. We're on TikTok, X, Instagram. Facebook page is coming soon. Boyers and I are in the works on that. So if you guys have any recommendations for us, please let us know. That being said, go Big Blue.
Go Big Blue.